I thought an interesting thing too, just recently Canada and the Netherlands just pulled out of Afghanistan. So I feel like that kind of, I mean, even more NATO allies are pulling out. It's going to kind of build even more pressure within other European allies to pull out. And I mean, and pretty soon maybe America's going to be left completely alone. I don't know. Or I think that was partly because of the big WikiLeaks leak. I mean, that kind of reduced, put more pressure on those other governments to.
Yeah, that and this recent report that they're making ornaments out of human body parts, fingers and ears and I don't know, teeth and stuff.
Collecting them.
Yeah, they're collecting them and making trinkets out of these body parts.
They had something called a kill team or something?
Well, that was an isolated incident within a Stryker brigade in Afghanistan in the Helmand province, or Kandahar province.
Right.
And basically, it was one person who kind of took the role of a kind of a social leader in the group and talked some other people into doing this. But the real bizarre situation behind that is that the person who told the truth got beat up by almost all 10 of those people on multiple cases for telling the truth about the situation. So that's kind of the sociopathic behavior that we see over there. And these people were killing, they weren't even killing combatants.
It was civilians.
They were killing civilians just for fun.
Well, I think this is just representative of kind of what war is. I mean, we have this image in our mind of what the war is. A lot of Americans watch TV and they get this sort of false image of what war is. And you never see the pictures of children with their skulls blown apart or whatever. And it's just that whenever war occurs, all other like war crimes and kinds of atrocities or the lowest elements of human nature just come out sort of naturally, like rape and these kinds of like killing civilians and collecting body parts and things like that. I mean, it seems like just within that atmosphere of just mass murder, just all the other sort of terrible things of human nature start being expressed. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen a skull blown apart. It was in a video game. And I know that sounds like a joke or something, but I'm serious. We are conditioning ourselves and each other that these war, like, and this is subliminal or subconscious as this may sometimes be, we are conditioning each other that this is okay. You know, I was at the Arkansas Naturals baseball game last night, actually. And that, you know, one of the sponsor of the game was the Army National Guard. Actually, the visitor booth was named after the Army National Guard. So if you won a prize, you had to go to the Army National Guard booth. You know, like, this is so insidious, and it just permeates our society in so many weird ways. I'm at a baseball game. I didn't expect to have to hear the phrase Army National Guard like 40 times. It's just like these little things people don't realize how it invades our society.
It does, and you know, for someone who hasn't been there and done that, it's probably not that big of a deal, but for a veteran who's just trying to go out and enjoy themselves, to have to hear the military glorified over and over and over while they're just trying to seek peace and, you know, enjoy some pure American entertainment, baseball. Yeah, it's kind of traumatizing. Yeah. You experience trauma from being in the military. You don't even have to go overseas to get a diagnosis of PTSD. That can happen just by joining the military. And then you deal with that for the rest of your life, and every time you go out into society and try to relax, it's constantly shoved down your throat.
A lot of propaganda, it seems.
Propaganda is a good word.
There's one other really important thing I think we certainly need to discuss, this issue of if America withdraws from Afghanistan, you know, the human rights and rights for women, you know, the safety of women, these kinds of things will decrease. We had that Time, certainly a propaganda image of Time magazine with the girl with her nose cut off or whatever by the Taliban. But I think what's interesting is that one of the biggest human rights activists in Afghanistan, Malala Joya, this woman, she has for a long time, even during the Taliban, she taught girls secretly in schools, and she essentially says that this is the big lie about Afghanistan, is that, you know, America has to be there, and if they leave, it's going to get worse. I mean, for women. And just a little bit about her. She is the youngest member of she was the youngest member of the Afghanistan Parliament, and she said that in the beginning of this war, women like her were being held up as an example of how the war liberated women. But she says, but this democracy was a facade, and the so-called liberation is a big lie. She says, after 8 years after the Taliban were toppled, our hopes for a democratic Afghanistan have been betrayed by continued domination of fundamentalists in a brutal occupation that serves only American strategic interests. And she points to the Karzai government as being very, very corrupt and full of warlords and extremists that are no different than the Taliban. And they're brothers in creed of the Taliban. And many of them have been involved in terrible crimes, war crimes, and especially during the previous civil war they had. And they're brutal warlords. And for speaking out about this and criticizing the government and the warlords, she was expelled from Parliament, and she's had multiple assassination attempts on her life. I actually thought she should have got the Nobel Peace Prize if you really study.
But Obama got it.
Study who was really working for peace. And she said that, and these warlords are receiving immunity from prosecution for these crimes. And this tells you a lot about what kind of democracy that we're like supporting there. And the Constitution actually forbids these war criminals from office, but Karzai chose 2 warlords as his running mates, Fahim and Khalili. So I mean, I don't know if you guys might have anything to say. You might know more about.
We do.
Definitely. The Karzai government, all for the most part, is Pashtun. And most of the resistance organizations on the ground just happen to be Pashtun. And he has pretty much appointed almost every member of his government as a Pashtun leader. So we base, and there's Dari, there's Tajik, there's Uzbek, there's many different ethnic groups in Afghanistan. But in all reality, we haven't created a system of democracy over there. We've created a monoculture that's telling everyone else what to do.
Yeah, it seems like kind of a puppet government too.
It is.
And it was interesting when I just watched a documentary about the Afghanistan elections, and it was strange how Karzai, America was spending millions of dollars helping his campaign, giving him helicopters and security, and all these other candidates, they got nothing. And I saw this one woman, she was like having assassination attempts and stuff, and I mean, it seemed like we were massively subsidizing Karzai's ability to win.
Yeah, she was actually, Layla was in office for a very short period of time before she issued that statement. That's one of the first things she said, and was ejected pretty quickly for taking a stand and saying those things. It was an interesting situation. The VFP, we want to talk about women's rights in Afghanistan and U.S. military pushing those. VFP issued a statement about rape in the military. And basically the statistic was, VFP is Veterans for Peace, by the way, the statistic was 1 in 3 women in the United States military is raped. So basically we have this force that is in Afghanistan, the United States military, that's supposedly liberating women, yet we rape 1 in 3 women in that military that's liberating women in Afghanistan. Yeah,
Malala Joya pointed to that too, that really like as bad as it was under the Taliban, things are just as bad now, and that there is rape and abuse going on, and there's no justice because the courts have been filled with fundamentalists, and I think they even legalized rape in their constitution or something, to where men aren't prosecuted for these kinds of things. I mean,
yeah, there's a significant amount of people. A lot of times they're women, but there's men and women both that think that otherwise would oppose the war, but they think that women's rights are one kind of redeeming factor of this occupation. And to people like that, I would ask this question. When we went through the internal process, we as in Americans went through the internal process of providing greater rights and liberties to women, thanks to champions such as Susan B. Anthony or Mary Cady Stanton. What country was here with weapons telling us to do that? Yeah. Was it China, was it Russia, or was it Israel? I don't remember. I wasn't alive back then. What country was it? There wasn't a country here forcing us to do that. So when you force a country at gunpoint to do that, there's going to be other side effects. It's just you're trying to rush the development further. What was she, the head of the Afghans Women's Studies, I think? Something like that. She went into great detail about how our presence over there is in a lot of ways undermining Afghans' own efforts to gain women's rights in a peaceful way. You just can't do that with an occupying force over there.